Welcome to episode 9 or 8, I forget, because we had too many mind duck 4-body, 7-body problems. Today we got a new thing to discuss. The listeners might not know that my father's name is Pavel, which is the Czech version of Paulo, my co-host. And today I got a new one. I have... Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks. I'm happy to be here.
So I got an Australian version of Paulo.
It's just Paul.
So if you're Spanish and your name is Pablo or Pablo,
I think it'd be Pablo.
Call me. Call us, send us an email to mindduckjapan@gmail.com.
If you're in Japan, yeah.
If you're in Japan and you're Spanish and your name is Pablo.
And you like books.
You like books, so please send us a message right now. But anyway, thank you so much for having time to discuss another book, Paul. How are you feeling today?
Yeah, I'm happy. I love talking everything about Lovecraft, so finally someone will actually listen to me.
One of the reasons that we planned this was that you had a bunch of critique about our third episode about Lovecraft.
Yeah.
Which the points were so good that I just said, never mind, just come on the podcast. It's easier if you say it. It's easier than if I correct it.
I enjoyed that podcast. But my criticism was you guys are like, if you want to try Lovecraft, you recommend... the
Nameless City?
Yeah, Nameless City and Dreams in the Witch House. And I was like, that's probably a bit too... not very accessible.
Okay.
So that's why today I selected this book. Because I thought, well, it's easy to read. It has all the kind of Lovecraft tropes. It's a little bit long, so if you wanted something shorter, I would probably say From Beyond is a good way.
I've heard about it.
It was a movie too.
Everything's a movie nowadays. I'm surprised there's even a video game.
But it's the same director, like Stuart Gordon, who made Reanimator.
Oh, you told me. I remember.
Yeah.
That sounds interesting, actually. I would like to see that.
Yeah, it's kind of like body horror, so it's a bit grotesque, but yeah. But the short story is actually really good, and it's kind of an easy Lovecraft story to read. Yeah, like Dreams in the Witch House is it's a good story, but I think it's something you probably read later if you're kind of getting into Lovecraft.
I like horror, that's why I chose it.
Okay.
And
Brown Jenkins.
Yeah, Brown Jenkins is great. And the Nameless City, I didn't enjoy that very much, to be honest.
I don't even remember reading the story.
There nothing happens.
Yeah, I was like...
This is my biggest critique on Lovecraft. Nothing much happens ever. And I expect grand things to happen, and they don't happen. And they're like, okay. Well, anyways, I want to talk a bit about you, because my Italian, Paolo, is... the connoisseur of despair, or connoisseur of despair, whichever way you want to say it. He calls me the feeble soul, which I think you might call me that as well, because I am so influenced by all these thoughts in the books. And we just discussed the 3-body problem, which we just talked about for hours on end. And you didn't faze you much.
No, I just enjoyed it for the story it was. I thought it was a good tale.
Like I said before, I was crushed, so I guess I'm the feeble soul.
Yeah. It's like, what's wrong with you?
Yes, many things are wrong with me, but let's not get into that. What would you say that you're into with books?
I think, like, Paulo was saying that he read a lot of Stephen King, and I grew up reading a lot of that stuff as well.
Have you read the Dark Tower series?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
No. I didn't read any of these, like, series books. I just sort of read the sort of individual novels. Recently, I was reading a lot of sort of sci-fi. That's why I got into the 3-body. And I was also reading, like, the Red Rising series. Do you know that?
Sounds familiar, but I don't know.
Pierce Brown. It's kind of a young guy. I think it's maybe getting turned into, like, a TV series or something.
Okay.
And recently, I was listening to Robert E. Howard, the writer of the Conan books.
Yeah, I meant to ask about that.
Yeah.
So how is that?
Yeah, I mean, he was described as an average writer, but I think his writing's actually quite good. Have you ever seen the movie Full Metal Jacket?
Of course.
Okay.
Many times.
So this is what... Because I found out there was a Robert E. Howard, like, biopic movie.
Oh.
And it's a very 1990s
Which
kind of
character?
Movie. I don't know, but it's got Renee Zellweger in it.
Did you say the Full Metal Jacket?
Okay, this is why I brought it up. Okay. Because... Robert E. Howard shot himself when he was 29 years old.
Oh, no.
I think he was really close to his mother, and she was dying of TB or something. So I watched a trailer for this movie. Was it The Whole Wide World? And I was like looking at the actor. I was like, who is this guy? I know him. So I checked him out. He was in Full Metal Jacket.
I see.
Guess which character he was.
Okay, the guy who shoots himself.
Yeah. I was like, why? Did the director choose this guy on purpose?
That's awful.
It's a real weird...
That's a very awful reference, but yes, might be the case.
Could be. He does look a bit like Robert E. Howard, though. So
I don't know what he looks like, but we'll trust you.
Okay, sure.
So the thing we're going to talk about is Shadow Over Innsmouth. Before we get into that, I wanted to just ask you a few things about the previous podcast and other stuff we talked about.
That's right.
One of them was the movie that I hated in the first episode of our 4-deck problem series, The Wandering Earth by Liu. It should be like Tsushin or something like that. Tsushin Liu.
You still can't do it.
Tsushin Liu. But anyways, how did you like the movie, The Wandering Earth?
I think it's trashy garbage.
Yeah.
But I like it.
How did you like it?
I have a reputation for liking bad movies.
Okay.
But the movie and the short story are really different. But the movie's kind of focusing on, I suppose, sci-fi. That's in
of course.
air quotes. Because it's quite bad. Where the short story is more actually like, kind of, it develops into more like a civil war.
Oh.
The main character, I think he marries... They restart the Winter Olympics or something. Because, the Earth is frozen. Why not?
That's even more ridiculous.
So they're doing like this jet... What is it called? Like a snowmobile thing? Race or something? And he meets this Japanese woman. And they get married later on. And then later she buys a telescope or something. And she's looking at the sun and saying, look, the sun is not exploding.
That's such a convoluted start to the story.
But anyway, she's convinced that the sun is not exploding and that they've been lied to.
Oh.
So it develops into this kind of conflict between two groups. Of course, the husband and wife kind of split up and go on to different sides. And then finally the husband kind of switches sides and says, yeah, the scientists are full of shit. And they remove the suits from the scientists and push them out onto the ice and kill them.
What?
And they're all singing together.
What?
Yeah, it's good. And they're all singing together, like, this is great. And suddenly they see the sun explode.
What the fuck?
And they're like, oh no, what have we done?
So the sun explodes before they start moving Earth?
No, this is like during.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did they mention the moon? That's my question.
No, I don't think so.
Where is the moon?
I didn't even think about it.
The whole time I was watching this movie, I was like, where is the moon? I was like, what is happening?
I was like, why is that important?
It's such a big thing. Where did it go?
The world's frozen.
I imagine that the acceleration of Earth would have to be gradual, thus pulling moon behind it and causing a bunch of problems, such as tsunamis and more earthquakes and stuff.
I don't think you should watch sci-fi movies. I honestly think
I can forget things, but the moon is not small, and it's right there. And I never mind.
I don't pay attention to it.
That was my question. You answered, so you have read it. So was it good?
Yeah, no, the short story is fun.
Was it logical?
No, I think it's more based on like kind of a human conflict.
Okay, so they don't care. Yeah.
No, the sci-fi is like a supporting.
I see.
Aspect of it. So it's not the main kind of focus.
Okay.
Of the story. So they talk a little bit at the beginning about the size of the engines and everything like this, but it's not really relevant to the main kind of story.
Okay.
So the movie again is just cheesy garbage.
Yeah, it was.
I enjoyed it.
I wasn't bored.
Yeah,
so it was good.
Yeah, it is what it is.
So, like I said, on this podcast, we'd like to dive into some more details about Lovecraft.
Yep.
And one of the things that we messed up was that he never married.
Yeah.
And
come on, guys.
And we've never seen a photo of him where he's smiling.
Did you find it?
I didn't look it up, sorry.
Really?
But I'm gonna do it now while we talk.
Yeah. Sonia Green. And there's a photo of them. She's sort of got her arms around him.
Okay.
And he's got like half a smile.
Half a smile? Is it this photo?
Yeah.
It's too blurry.
Oh, come on.
He looks very amused and happy in this picture,
he does.
I admit.
Yeah.
So he has married. Do you know any details about how long for?
Not exactly, but it was a very short marriage. Yeah, I mean, things are complicated, I think, with people. Of course, it's not so simple. Like in his early days, he wrote a lot of sort of anti-Semitic kind of letters and things like this. But he ends up marrying a Jewish lady.
Okay.
So I think as well, like his upbringing, his mother and his aunts were quite kind of fucked up influence over his life. His aunts were really against him marrying her. She had her own business. She was a divorcee, actually. Okay. So this is her second marriage. She had some business in New York. So he was dragged off to New York. He hated it. If you read, what's the story? Red Hook something, I forget. Yeah, he just hates the place. And it's clear in his writings. Eventually, his aunts convince him to come back to Providence. And then kind of the marriage kind of falls apart. I think after that.
Thanks for clarifying that. I had no idea.
There's another interesting bit. The first time he had sex was with Sonia Green.
How do you know that?
Because he wrote about, typical Lovecraft, he went to the library and found all the books he could find about how to have sex.
What?
And he researched it. And he wrote in a letter or something like, if you don't know how to have sex by a certain age, it's kind of...
Too late.
Yeah, it's too late. Yeah. You can't do anything about it.
Too will take you. It's too late for it.
But she made a comment about it in a book or something. She said he was very adequate or something. So, there you go. So, yeah.
Didn't expect these details to come up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whether he was gay or not, probably more likely asexual, I guess. He had all these writer friends, and he was a very outgoing person, actually. He had huge correspondence with all these different writers. And I think it was Barlow, another writer, who was actually gay.
Okay.
But he was in a correspondence with Barlow. And Barlow's like, come down to my house in Florida and stay with us.
That might have been how it started.
No. He gets to Florida and discovers Barlow's actually a 14-year-old boy.
Oh.
He's like, oh my God. So he stays with his family for like 3 weeks.
What?
And in Lovecraft's writing, he's like, oh, we took a boat ride on the lake together and stuff like this. I don't think anything happened, of course, but it's kind of weird. But yeah, again, sadly, Barlow, I think, was a university professor in Mexico or something.
Okay.
And someone was going to out him, and he ended up killing himself. So yeah, another suicide.
Oh my God. So you've learned all this from just reading his stories?
Yeah, I read I didn't read it completely. S.T. Joshi's I Am Providence, his biography. It's like a 1,200 page book, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I just went through parts that kind of interest me, but that was quite a well-known story about his life. So
okay,
yeah, I mean, like, if Lovecraft was alive today, he'd probably be like a Reddit moderator or something, because he just had like he couldn't keep pace with all the letters and stuff. Totally in correspondence with like hundreds of writers, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, you can Google like how many letters he wrote, and something like 30,000 or something.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah.
Well, one more point I want to talk about was you brought up his editor, Farnsworth Wright. Is it the correct name?
No, it wasn't his editor. Farnsworth Wright is the pulp magazine editor of Weird Tales. Weird Tales was quite a famous pulp magazine. They had a bit of a falling out. So this story, Shadow Over Innsmouth, Lovecraft was trying to get it published in another magazine or somewhere else.
So Lovecraft was happy with the story?
No, he was totally sick of it. He hated it, actually.
And he hated it because...
he was trying to rewrite it in different styles to try and shop it around. I think he rewrote it 4 times.
Okay.
And by the 5th time he wrote it, he was just sick of it. He hated it. Then his friend August Derleth, who's quite another important person in his life. August Derleth has a reputation as being quite the hack writer. He's pretty bad. And August Derleth is like, oh, I'll make the revisions for you, and I'll get it published. And
so that
HP was like, no, it's okay. Don't, please. Shadow Over Innsmouth was the only book that he actually published in like a book format.
Oh.
The rest were just published in sort of pulp magazines. The printing of the book was a mess, full of typos. I think there was only like maybe 500 copies or something of it printed. If you look online, if you try to find a copy of it for sale, it's about maybe $7,000, $8,000. It's a rare.
That's crazy.
But the illustrations I heard in the book are quite nice, but it's just full of like typos and mess.
Interesting.
August Derleth was he was a very important figure, because without him we probably wouldn't be talking about Lovecraft. He started Arkham House Publishing, published all his works, and he kind of put Lovecraft back into sort of He rescued him out of like obscurity, basically. Okay. He was a hack, but he was very, very important to sort of rescuing Lovecraft from that.
You mentioned he also tried to publish stuff in his name that he edited.
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't very well.
No. So you might find books with like some kind of title and it says H.P. Lovecraft. And you flip over the back and it says, with August Derleth. Because August Derleth would take his notes, some of just fragments of stories. He wouldn't change it, but he could work it into his own kind of crap.
And that happened later after
his death, yes. So you might find these like books with H.P. Lovecraft and you start reading it like, this is really bad. Because it's not him. It's snippets of him. Just fragments of him. Yeah, that's August.
So just to round this up, would you say that seeing the name Derleth at the book cover is a red flag or not?
Yes. Well, you got to look for it because it's usually on the back at the bottom or something.
So when it comes to Lovecraft, you don't want the D? Don't have any Derleth in your stories?
No.
Thanks for the warning.
Yes.
So let's move on to the actual book. I wanted to say that I wanted to give Lovecraft one more chance.
Okay.
I don't want to talk down on it. I don't want to be like rude about it. But what I'm trying to say...
Did you actually like the book?
Yeah, I don't know, because I always have the same problem with this writing style. And so I want to say, I really enjoyed the style it was written in. It was very easy to read. It was very simple, very fast to read, unless you can't deal with the mumbling of crazy drunkards, which we'll get into. So I enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed it, but I was disappointed again that nothing much happened, like I said at the beginning. And this was my... I wanted to give it one more go, because this is one of the more recent, maybe the most recent story, and it shows it's much better, I think, than the other ones.
Okay.
And the other ones I was amused, interested, but it doesn't make me want to read more, which this one didn't do either. I was just like, it's nice, but I don't think I want to read more Lovecraft after this.
Do you want the writer to kind of explain things away to you?
No, I just want more things to happen.
Okay.
Like in this story, it was the same like all the other stories. It's the character and the like bread and butter or the meat of this story is the feelings of the character, which are very well described, and you get an anxiety attack if you get into it, which I think is one of the themes of Lovecraft.
Yes.
I imagine him just sitting somewhere and being very anxious and then talking about it. And that's what happened in this story. And then you add some flavoring to have some demons and like and stuff. That's how I feel about this. How do you feel about this book?
For me, it ties together all the classic Lovecraft tropes. So it's kind of a nice package. When I was sort of rereading it or re-listening to it, for this, I was like, oh man, this is really obvious. I didn't kind of, because I just sort of listen to stories and I sort of, just enjoy it, and I don't really kind of try to think too deeply about it or look for hints or clues or try to guess the ending or anything. I just kind of go along with it.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. I mean, like, I read it really quickly and I didn't feel like it was like 160 pages, I think.
Okay.
And I read it in like 2 days and it was like nothing. So it was very easy read, even though I suffered with chapter 3.
Was that the mumbling?
So there's a guy in this story, this is not a spoiler, and he keeps mumbling. People do this sometimes. We talked about this on the third episode with Alan Moore, how he writes to be stylish in a way that is like a slang. So you can imagine the accent and the dialect.
See, I just listened to the audiobook because I was like, that
might be easy.
Yeah, it was easy to hear.
I'm not English, I'm not American, I'm not Australian, so it's a struggle for me. I'm like, if I focus, I can do it. I can think about it, I can deduct the meaning, but it's tiring after like 100 pages.
Yeah, I'd imagine so.
So that was my only gripe with this.
Okay. Yeah, I've been drunk in the pub this time, so it's kind of like just... natural English for me.
Coming up later in the episode, your best impression of a drunkard talking about fish having sex.
Hey, mister. He's waving the alcohol bottle. Yeah, a bit of background about the story too, actually. So it was inspired by a Lovecraft trip to Newburyport. Okay. Which basically had seen better days.
Is that near...
I think it's Massachusetts.
It's okay.
Yeah. Also, it was inspired probably by Irvin S. Cobb's Fishhead, which was mentioned in Lovecraft's essay, Supernatural Horror in Literature, that I listened to yesterday, actually.
Oh.
It's a short story. Only took about 27 minutes or so to listen to.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's good. I like Fishhead. Yeah. He's pretty good. So,
From all these stories and books and novelettes and novellas, is this one your favorite from Lovecraft?
I was thinking about that question, and I was like, I finally said, yeah, I think it is, because it does have all the Lovecraft tropes. But I would say it's probably one of my favorites.
Okay.
I think it's just accessible.
Yeah.
And also the character is the main character's name actually is Oldsman. It doesn't mention it in the final draft, but he mentions it in previous drafts.
Okay.
It's basically Lovecraft.
Yeah, that's what I want to say, actually.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. He's... Because Lovecraft would do these sort of bus tours.
Oh, really?
And, he traveled all the way down to Florida. He traveled all the way up to Quebec.
Oh, you mean you went on bus tours? I thought he like organized.
No. But no, what he would do, because he was such a stingy cheapskate, he wouldn't stay at a hotel. He just catch the overnight bus. Mm-hmm. So he wouldn't have to stay at a hotel and visit his friends or something. The character in the book does the same thing. Yeah. He's always looking for the cheapest way.
That makes sense. Yeah. It's basically him having an anxiety attack on a trip. That's
basically. Yeah.
Sounds very real.
Yeah, it is.
I feel like at the time he was alive, many people must have felt like that, and he was one of the people who could write about it well. That's how I feel about all these stories. Yeah, before we get into the spoilers, the last thing I always want to say is I'd recommend this because it's very easy to read if you're curious about this kind of story.
Yeah, it's a good story to start with Lovecraft.
Like I said, I wished more happened.
I think a lot does happen, actually, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. But I mean, my experience with Lovecraft is always the same. I'm always very excited, and I really want to know what goes on in these stories, and nothing goes on.
Yeah, that's the horror of it.
I'm looking for a few things. I'm looking for an idea, a concept, like a nice atmosphere, and
fish people, man.
And then like a plot that goes somewhere and has a point. And from these, I'm only getting the atmosphere.
Okay, we'll talk about that.
Okay. Before we move into spoilers, I'd like to give a quick shout out to Paul's art, because you might not know that Paul's an aspiring artist. I'm looking at his paintings right now, and it looks like one of his paintings jumped straight out of a Lovecraft story. It's called Moonlight Seascape, very Lovecraft-esque if you ask me. And I really like that Paul's style is really interesting up close as well as from a distance. It's kind of a mix of pointillism and like impressionism, and I'm not sure. I'm not a professional painter, so I'm not sure what you'd call these styles, but I really like it. So I wanted to mention his shop, because recently he started doing commissioned art as well. So check out his website. He's got a shop at minne.com. That's minne.com/ and then @PaulCreates. I'll put a link in the description, of course. You can also check out his Instagram at paulbowenart. So check it out. He's created his Instagram account like yesterday. I've been pressuring him to make the website and the shop before this episode is released. And I feel like I'm not the only person who's been trying to tell him to share his art. So I'm really happy to hear that he's already sold some paintings, and he's finally decided to go public with it. So give him some love, and let's continue with the episode. Okay, so if you want to read this, hit stop, come back after you've read it. If you want to know what this is about in detail, let's move into spoilers. And we're gonna do like a quick summary and then talk about our impressions in detail, why we disagree.
A quick summary? I think it's...
Oh god.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's gonna be a 2-hour podcast.
Maybe.
So let's get into I guess we can just go step by step, and if you have more to say about it, we can just get into it.
Yeah, I'll just jump in.
It's not that long. Basically 5 chapters. Each chapter is like a step in the story. Chapter 1 is describing the history of the city. And what happened there and how weird it was.
Well, it's not describing history, it's describing what's kind of happening as at the moment.
Around there.
Yeah, kind of in recent history.
Connected to there.
Yes. This is another kind of Lovecraft trope where the story always starts at the end.
Oh, okay. Well, kind of.
So, yes. So he's dropped huge hints at the beginning already. There's a terrible decision I'll have to make.
Okay.
This town, Innsmouth, people are being arrested. People without trial. People are kind of taken to concentration camps. The Black Reef has been torpedoed. There's an interesting point about that too, like when they're talking about these people being arrested without trial and stuff, and then like, there's human rights groups that are protesting about that, and the government takes them along and has meetings with them and shows them. And then suddenly the human rights groups are like, oh, okay, that's cool. It's fine. Nothing to complain about.
Yep, that was interesting.
Yeah. Except for one tabloid magazine or newspaper that everyone dismissed anyway. So.
Yeah, other than that, tiara in a library is mentioned with a bunch of creatures on it.
Oh, you're jumping ahead really fast. God. But why has this guy, Olmsted, ended up in this town?
I forgot who it was. No, this is the main character.
Yes.
Olmsted. I never remember names, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, his name's not mentioned in this session.
Well, so that was one of my questions, and I assumed that he was interested in the history and he wanted to investigate the town on his own.
Yeah, I mean, because he's basically Lovecraft and he's looking for the cheapest way to travel to Arkham, back to his hometown, I think. And the guy at the ticket booth suggests he takes the steam train. And he's like, oh, that's too expensive. And the guy's like, well, you could take that bus to Innsmouth.
Okay.
And he's like, Innsmouth? And he's like, it's not even on the map.
Okay.
So he becomes interested or curious about this town. That something's mentioned on the map. And the guy, the ticket guy, he's like describing the place and he's saying like, yeah, we don't really think much of it here. And, you know, most people don't like the people there. And there's a good line. He's like, oh, well, most of that just comes down to like race prejudice. And I can't blame them. I hate those Innsmouth people too. It's like, what? And yeah, so he gets curious in this town. He's like, but the guy's like, yeah, don't stay there overnight. Because other weird stuff has gone down with other, I think, tax collectors or tax inspectors or like census people and stuff like that have terrible time there. Don't stay there overnight. Just go there for a day trip. You probably like it if you're into kind of old-timey stuff. It's like, okay, so I'll take the Innsmouth bus. Yeah.
So he tries to study and learn more about it, and he finds more about some kind of a cult that's...
Yeah, the librarian mentions... the esoteric order of Dagon.
Which they keep mentioning and never explaining what it means. But it's a cult.
It's a cult.
Okay.
Yeah. Like Dagon was like kind of his first sort of popular or breakout story, I guess. Kind of gives a little detail about the deep ones.
Okay.
So maybe something people could check out as well.
It's an interesting reference. Maybe he's just trying to hook you in and read more of his things. So they find this tiara and it's got fish people on it.
But it's also made out of like a weird kind of gold or something.
Yeah, but very strange material, design, ornaments, carvings. Because
the main industry in Innsmouth is...
tiara making?
Well, kind of. It was like... it used to be like fishing and lobstering.
Yeah.
And also gold refinery.
I forgot that.
And the mystery is like, where do they get the gold from?
I see. I forgot that completely.
Yeah. Yeah, so even when the inspectors go to check out the refinery, like all the equipment is in disarray and everything like this. So it's like, where are they getting this? Okay,
so chapter 2, he gets on the bus.
Yes. The Innsmouth bus. The only people from Innsmouth use. Because everyone else hates the Innsmouth people.
So first chapter, I was intrigued. Second chapter, I was having a lot of fun with this bus driver.
Joe Sargent.
Yeah. And he's described as the like sleaziest, weirdest, dirtiest person we've ever met.
Well, his eyes don't blink.
And his eyes don't blink, which was a little creepy, yeah?
He's a bit bald. He's fairly bald.
Basically, anything bad you can say about the city is true about Innsmouth. Anything ugly you can say about people is true about this guy. So
yeah.
The only thing worse would be if he was missing a limb or something, which I was expecting. He doesn't have a leg or something like that.
How would he drive the bus?
Yeah, he's got the second leg.
Okay.
He just switches it up. So he wants to save money, so he gets on this cheap-ass bus.
Yeah, it's like 60 cents or something.
And he's the only passenger, only person on the bus.
Yeah. There's an interesting line through that book as well when he was talking about the erosion of the seacoast. Do you remember that? It's kind of funny because he was talking about how people used to believe something sort of mysterious or dark happened to cause the erosion or something. Okay. And Lovecraft says, oh no, it's from like chopping down the trees too close to the coast that caused the salt to blow in. So it's just sort of funny, I thought, how he sort of builds up this sort of mystery and then it's like explains it away. It's like that's Lovecraft usually doesn't do that. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So on the way there, they also catch a glimpse of cult leader at an entrance.
Yeah. Coming out of the church or whatever.
Which it almost seemed like he knew him, but did he?
Well, that kind of comes up the theme of it, I guess, that we could probably talk about later. You know, that sense of, I know this place, or I'm drawn to this place kind of thing as well.
So I guess there's a note, if you want to know more about the deep ones and all that, just, is it Dagon or Dagon? Or
Dagon?
Dagon. There's also a game that is free on Steam.
Yeah, it's not, I played it. It's not really a game. It's like sort of just an interactive story. It's word for word of Dagon.
And that's directly connected to this story?
Well, none of his stories are directly connected. So it's all loosely connected.
It gives depth to...
Yeah, it shows the deep ones and shows sort of like fish people and...
Yes, yeah. So it's heavily related, I would say.
True.
Yeah, so I was pumped up. I was like, yeah, this is a great story. It's so easy to read. And then chapter 3 hit me hard. And it was my favorite and most hated at the same time. Because he wants to learn more about the city. So he keeps walking around and stuff. And then he wants to get more information from this guy we just mentioned.
Yeah, but first, you kind of skipped ahead a bit.
Okay.
Because he goes to like a supermarket chain.
Yeah, he does a bunch of things.
Yeah, but the supermarket chain, he meets a boy who's not from Innsmouth.
Okay.
And the boy is like, I don't want to be here, but the supermarket transferred me here. So I have to work and I don't want to give up my job. And he was like quite happy to talk to someone from out of town. So he draws like a map of the town. And he says some areas don't go here.
Okay.
Because people might not come back from there. He mentions that about Zadok Allen, the town drunk.
Okay, that's why. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's why he knows about him.
Which was strange to me that he's the town's famous drunk and cult leader at the same time.
Well, no, he was initiated into the cult, but he never took the fourth pledge or whatever it was, something like that.
Okay, so now there's a pledge for the cult. Like, how does this work?
I suppose the fourth pledge is like, we're hooking you up with Fish Susie over there, so off you go.
I've imagined that cults are, first of all, not publicly announcing how to get in them. Second of all, they wouldn't have a pledge to do, and finally, they wouldn't be so upfront about it.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about cults. That's the bottom line here. Yeah. Never mind.
Okay, so he finds out about Zadok from the grocery boy. And he has a map now. So he's checking out the town. But he feels like, I can't stand this place. I want to get out of here. Yeah. And then he catches...
that's actually, I forgot to mention that. Yeah. So he wants to leave, he wants to get out. But as soon as, just last second, he sees Zadok and he decides to stay to talk to him.
And the grocery boy mentioned that Zadok, you can only get him talking about the town once you fill him with liquor. So you got to liquor him up and then he will spill his guts.
So he buys a grand old bottle of whiskey, gives it to him, and they just start talking and drinking. That's the whole chapter, basically. Most of it.
Yeah, I mean, I like how he kind of traps him. Sort of, he gets a bottle of whiskey and sort of shakes the bottle at him and walks down the street.
Of course.
And Zadok's like, hey, mister.
So he talks like a drunkard, and
initially Olmsted is sort of prodding him, trying to get information. The narrator is like, I'm going to have to go back and buy more booze because he's just not talking at all.
Yeah.
And just then, I think Zadok catches a glimpse of Devil's Reef. This was the famous reef mentioned in the story, where suddenly then his eyes sort of start to change, and he starts sort of telling the history of what happened to the town. Yeah, that's true. Do you remember any of the historical points about the city?
I didn't expect this to be a historic quiz.
Do you remember Captain Obed Mush?
I remember a bunch of shit went down, but I didn't memorize it. I'm sorry.
I think I've read this too many times.
Okay.
So Obed Mush, he was the one that kind of struck up the deal with the fish people.
Oh, okay.
So
then, I don't know who that is. I thought it was somebody before that.
So Obed Mush was when the town was sort of going down and people were praying to Christian gods, he was like, you got to get some better gods. And I know these fish people that will drive the fish in and give us things that we want.
It's nice that he knows them.
And I can't remember how he meets up with them though. Anyway, but then they are going to have to sacrifice people. And then Zadok starts explaining that, well, after a while of the sacrifices, the fish people are like, well, we want something else. You know what? Just a little change. We're not so different. So you've written a note here, sex with fish people.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
So not only does he know gods, he also...
Fish gods.
Fish gods, yeah.
Yeah. Things got better. The town got the weird gold. And they got fish. Just had to fuck fish. It's fine.
Which they are gods, so it's better than just fish.
Well, it's better than sacrificing.
Yes. Yeah. But not if all of your families and town transforms into fish people, which they seemed like they strangely enjoyed that. But anyway...
Well, and there was another point too, I think, about it's often mentioned the Devil's Reef that you can kind of see at low tide in Innsmouth. And they said that, I think that's where he used to take people out for sacrifices or something like that.
So he tells him all this, but he tells him in a way that's written, like I said, in a very mumbled drunkard-like way. And you listen to us as an audiobook, which might have been the better choice.
Yes, definitely.
I struggled through this, so I'd like to read you a few examples. And one of the most amusing ones was when they start mentioning having sex with fish gods. but before that, he tries to persuade him to tell more and more before he gets drunk. Does his language devolve, or is it always the same? I was thinking about it. Is it getting worse, or am I just getting tired while reading this?
No, I think it's kind of consistent throughout the whole thing.
So it was just me. I just felt like it was getting worse because I was like, I can't deal anymore. So I'm going to read a very simple line in a very bad accent, and then Paul's going to do a good accent just to compare.
Because I'm already half drunk. Should be easy.
So like I promised... old drunkard man impression coming up. Skip 1 minute forward if you don't want to hear that.
It's 1 minute.
I got a lot to say about this.
Okay.
So he doesn't want to say anything, and he says, "Oh, you young feller! Well, even if I ain't told you nothing yet, I'm not going to do now. You just listen to me, boy. This is what I ain't never tell nobody." And he goes on like that.
That's pretty good.
And I was like, what the hell is he talking about? So he says, "I am going to now." Does that mean yes or no? I don't understand what that even means.
I'm going to now. I'm going to tell you something now. So yes.
Okay, so I thought he meant not. So never mind.
No, I think it's very clear. He's going to tell you something.
So I'll let you choose a line if you want to read the same one. You get this one.
I picked out my favorite line.
Okay, you got the fish. You got the fish line.
Yes. Seems that human folks got a kind of relation to such seawater beasts that everything alive come out of the water once it needs a little change to go back again.
Didn't get any verse out of that.
Really? That's clear as day to me.
Maybe.
Seems that human folks got a kind of relation to water beast that everything alive come out of the water once and only needs a little change to go back in. See, I'm just reading it normally. So
I take it all back. Don't listen to this. Just read it, please. This is too much. I couldn't understand anything you said.
What was the other part? He mentions as well something, a really important plot point, that there was kind of a revolt and Obed Marsh gets arrested and put in jail.
Yeah.
And then there's like the fish people come out of the water and rescue him out of the jail.
Okay.
And Obed's like, things are going to change now because I'm in charge, kind of thing. So.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was kind of a major point on the story.
Yeah. Thanks for clarifying again.
Yes.
So let me read one more line.
It's kind of like my favorite part of the book.
This is definitely the best part of the book. But it's also the most infuriating. So he talks about the real horror. The real horror, I tell you. And he says that these fish devils... Yeah, I read this quickly. I don't know what's happening.
Okay.
So he says...
I'll translate it for you.
This is like what you call the game in English. In Czech we call it the silent post. This you tell a message you whisper a message to the guy next to you, and then
Chinese whispers.
Okay, that's the English version.
Yes, Chinese whispers.
It's like Chinese whispers, Lovecraft version. Well, it's this. It ain't what them fish devils has done. It was what they are going to do.
They're going to bring stuff up. I already know it.
He remembers this.
Yeah, I know.
They are bringing things up about where they are coming from into the town.
So he's like, they could wipe us out.
We ain't doing it for a year. The sun's slickering up lately.
Excuse me?
What's slackening up? Is that slickering off?
It's like slacking off, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Them houses now how the river betwixt water on Main Street. It's full of them devils and what they're brung and when they get ready. I say, when they get even here of a sugar.
Was that cough like an actual cough, or you put that in?
Both.
Was that shock off?
Yes.
Have you ever seen a shock off?
No, but you know what it is.
Yes.
What
shock
is
off.
it?
Shock off is described at the Mountains of Madness. They were created by, I think, the Elder Ones to build their kind of town or facility or palace or whatever you call it in the Antarctic area. And then I think the Shoggoths, originally they weren't kind of have any intelligence, but I think later they developed it or something like that.
Okay.
But I mean, Mountains of Madness is one of his another famous Lovecraft story. But there's a part of the story where the explorers find all these like hieroglyphics talking about the history, and I just kind of zoned out when reading it because it just goes into so much detail. It just didn't really interest me.
Well, I might bring up, we're skipping a bit around, but there's a bunch of amusing names in this, and since you already talked about Shoggoths, I wanted to ask you how you'd read the other names, which at the end of this book he mentions the descendant of that's how I read it. I don't know what this is. Can you read that?
I don't know.
The spelling is PTH_THYA-L_YI.
I can't say it either.
That's
pretty close.
And the second name that's even more insane is just like... Oh, that one is better. This one I can say.
Oh, that's pretty close. Yeah.
But you're the expert. You say it.
I
meant more like, okay, what I'm asking is how did they say it in the audio version? Do you remember?
It's interesting because if you listen to different audio versions, everyone has their own different pronunciation. I mean, even the word like Cthulhu wasn't supposed to be able to be pronounced by human speech. Mm-hmm. It was written in a way that
makes complete sense, and I approved it.
Yes.
So chapter 3, the best. For me, it goes downhill from here. but I like this a lot, even though it was a struggle to read.
So what happened with the bus? So he wants to get out.
Yeah, so he finishes up this meeting and wants to get back on the bus so he can leave to Arkham.
Well, you forgot something. When he's talking to Zadok, the drunk.
Okay.
Zadok starts freaking out.
Yeah, he sees something in the dark in the reef in the waters, and then mumbles a bunch of other shit and then leaves.
And like I think he just fucks off or something, isn't he? Yeah.
It's it would creep you out a lot if that happened.
Yeah. He sees him, so they know this guy is in town, and they know that Zadok has been speaking to him. Mm-hmm. All right, so he wants to get out of there, so he gets on the bus.
So he wants to get on the bus, but the bus is broken.
Turns on to the Truman Show.
Yes, that's a good way to say that.
Sorry, sir.
And the bus is at the Gilman's Hotel, which pun intended, I guess. And
so the Gilman Hotel.
And you heard about this hotel before in the beginning. They said that somebody got nightmares and it's like the worst place to stay. And
oh no, the inspector or whatever said that he was hearing like voices in other rooms, people talking. And he didn't even like undress. He just stayed in his work clothes in the morning, just sort of got out there as soon as possible. Also, the room doesn't have a lock on the door or something.
That was weird. So he has to stay at the hotel because the bus broke down, and it almost feels like it's pretend broke down just to keep him in there.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And then he finds out he cannot lock the door because the bolt is screwed off, like taken off the door.
Yeah, it's obvious, so you can see like the markings where it's been taken off.
Then he screws it back on, so why would they leave it in the room? Why would they take it away?
He moves a different lock from a different...
Oh, I forgot that.
Okay. I thought with these handy like 6-in-1 utility tool or whatever that he carries around with him.
Very handy that he has that, and I was amused that they took it off the door and they left it in the room conveniently, so I mistook that, sorry. But he starts hearing a lot of stuff, he couldn't fall asleep.
Yeah, someone's trying to like open the door, so trying to get into the room.
Yeah, and then it goes down exactly like I expected, like this story, because I was like, he's gonna freak out so hard, he's gonna have such an anxiety attack, he's gonna get running all over the place, freaking out, and then nothing's going to happen much, and that's exactly what happened.
Well, I mean, the actual scene where he's actually trying to get out was actually
very
kind of
intense.
Yeah, and usually Lovecraft stories aren't don't have that kind of tension.
That was the primetime anxiety attack.
Yeah.
So it gets more and more ridiculous. So he's trying to like lock the door, then people are trying to get in, and he hears weird sounds of probably fish people hopping around.
Yes. Flopping.
Flopping, and they smell like hell.
Yep. A very fishy smell.
So he doesn't have any better idea than to theorize and super overplan how to jump on the roof and run away.
He's got the map. From the boy.
That he couldn't have drawn so accurately, but okay.
Maybe he's been there for a while.
Okay.
There's another part of that as well. That's right. So earlier in the story, they mention about Old Man Marsh, the owner of the refinery.
Okay.
And no one's seen him recently because he's got like a skin condition or deformity or something.
Yeah.
During the escape, he sees this guy like hopping or jumping around.
I forgot that he was hopping.
Yeah, it's one of them's wearing a hat.
Okay.
That must be Old Man Marsh because he's trying to hold on to that kind of humanity.
I see.
So wear a hat.
Okay.
But
I missed that reference.
Really?
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he busts through a door to the other room and then through a window and jumps on the roof and runs away. It's super anxious.
You make it sound far more exciting, actually.
I thought it was exciting.
Oh, okay.
It was very like Mad Men descending into anxiety attack.
Yeah, but he goes into a lot of detail about street names. So up Fish Street, then up.
Yeah, then he keeps
Frogman
running
Street.
around and I don't know where he is at all.
Yeah, it's a bit confusing.
And
yes.
at this point of the story, I was convinced that it's not going to be confirmed at all that it ever happened, and it's going to be just suggested that it only happened in his head, which is actually what's happening in Lovecraft's head when he's on a trip somewhere in a pub and being freaked out by people walking around and looking at him weird. That's what exactly happened.
I thought that's high school English. The teacher would say, "Don't write at the end. It was just a dream." Mm.
So it didn't end like that. So I appreciate that very much.
Okay.
Chapter 4 ends with him getting over a bridge.
Yep.
And then hiding in a bush.
Yeah, and then he sees the frog people.
So something's happening. I was like, yes, but it's almost the end of the book. Damn it.
There's a twist coming.
Yes, that I appreciate the ending. That saved it for me.
Okay.
But
yeah, he catches. He's trying to hide in the bush, and he doesn't want to look at the people, the fish people, and he catches a glimpse of them.
Mm-hmm. And this is a lovely description of like this is where they mentioned the head. Maybe.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe. Yeah,
so a bunch of creatures are hopping around, jumping, like slooping, splooshing, smudding. And then doing it in such a scary way that he passes out, which I found quite hilarious.
Well, I mean, a Lovecraft trope was the classic Lovecraft faint. The character would always faint in a situation.
I didn't know that's a trope.
Yeah, almost every story you can guarantee the character faints when he sees something horrible.
Maybe.
But this situation kind of understand it.
Maybe Lovecraft just faints a lot, as I do.
But that was an interesting point because he wrote a story for Harry Houdini called Under the Pyramids. Houdini liked the story, but the main character again has a faint in the story. And Harry Houdini's like, I wouldn't do that. I'm fucking Harry Houdini. I don't faint. Lovecraft spoke that, but I faint every day.
Exactly. Really? That's funny. That's an interesting image. Houdini meeting Lovecraft.
They had dinner together or something, I think.
That's interesting.
Under the Pyramids. Yeah, that's a good story too.
Yeah, so if you want to know how much I faint, listen to episode 26 of the Mind Tech Japan podcast. It's a hobby of mine. So I might have more in common with Lovecraft.
Yeah, maybe so.
Than I knew.
So yeah, he faints in the bush. So that's the end of chapter 4, I think.
So chapter 5, I was expecting him to wake up in a fish orgy or something, but no. It's much boring than that. Much more boring than that. Yeah. So I had like at the end of this chapter, I was like hoping it would be something hilariously crazy with fish people, and he would like transform into a fish person after having a threesome with a fish octopus. So that's my hoping.
But how would you change into a fish person?
Magic, I don't know. What I was afraid would happen is nothing.
Feel dirty the next day.
I thought that it would just never be mentioned again, and it was supposed to be a dream. That's what I was afraid would happen.
Okay.
And then something else happened, which was kind of okay. So I wasn't disappointed.
Okay.
So maybe you should take over. What happens in the last chapter?
Well, he wakes up.
He's okay.
I think he wakes up in the rain or something. I can't remember how he finds. He finally takes the train back to Arkham.
After having a huge anxiety attack and almost dying, he will shell out for the train.
Yes, finally. So then his father gets him a job at a law firm or something like that. So he kind of just puts his head down and starts working. And then I think he's cousin or something is in a mental asylum or something.
So at this point, he's pretending it didn't happen, or did he tell anybody?
Oh, that's right. He went to the authorities.
Okay.
And that circles back around to the beginning of the book, where his pleas to the authorities make them actually go and investigate the town, which is quite interesting because, like, generally when the character kind of pleads about, these horrible things are coming, all these monsters, everyone is like, yeah, right, sure, buddy. But in this case, they actually go and check out and say, this town's full of, like, weird fish-looking people. Let's bomb the shit out of it and burn it and arrest them.
Really?
Yeah, that's right.
I didn't remember the bombing.
Oh, they torpedoed the devils.
Oh, really?
No, they burned down the shacks and stuff as well.
What?
Or the worm-eaten
Maybe
building.
I was just out of it at this point.
Okay. So he pleads with authorities. They actually take some action, which is mentioned at the beginning of the book. Mm-hmm. His father then gets him a job. He kind of just puts his head down, starts working, and then he starts noticing something is changing.
Yeah.
Oh, but we've missed a part as well.
Which part?
Before he goes back, he does a little bit more research at Arkham, at the library, about his family history.
Oh, yeah, but that's what I thought what the ending was.
No, because when he was finding out the researcher mentioned about Innsmouth woman who tricked an Arkham man into marriage.
Okay, yeah.
So that's a big hint as well. So we've kind of jumped around a bit. And the librarian mentions that, he has a bit of that old man Marsh look in his face. His old Marsh, or Obed Marsh look or something. Mm-hmm. The Innsmouth woman that tricked an Arkham man into marriage.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay. Who could that be? And then his... I think he also mentioned about how he was always uncomfortable with his grandparents' side or something. Yeah. He never liked visiting them, and he always felt... Oh. And then the grandfather shot himself.
I forgot that. Okay.
Yeah, okay, that was an important point too. But they don't know why he shot himself. Mm-hmm. And then he starts noticing that he's starting to change. Mm-hmm. And then he starts having the dreams.
Yeah.
Do you remember that part?
I remember that part, but I can't say exactly because...
who's visiting him?
Is it a cousin or not?
No, it's his grandmother.
Okay.
Yeah, so she starts visiting him, and he's dreaming about these underwater palaces and things like this, like that. And finally, his face kind of seizes up. He can't blink his eyes anymore and everything like this. And so that kind of mentions that at the beginning, that awful decision he has to make. So he mentions he's born an automatic.
Yeah. That
and
makes sense.
His grandmother starts saying, "Oh, you can come live with us forever."
That was a very big surprise, this line. Mm-hmm. I wasn't expecting her to say that at all.
Well, she mentions that he's going to have to do a pen... Because he caused the torpedoing of Black Creek. They didn't damage it, but he's going to have to pay for that a little bit. I don't know what.
Cut off his legs. Put fish fins on it.
Just... doing some bricklaying or something.
I was sure she was going to kill him or something. And
maybe it's just a ruse.
Maybe.
Come down, live with us.
Because
this is the guy that...
from all of my speculation, I have never thought of him living happily ever after with fish gods under the sea. That's how it ends.
Well, yeah, he decides that he's going to break his cousin out of the mental asylum. Mm-hmm. And he's going to go live with the fish people.
Which the cousin is already half transformed into a fish or something.
Yeah, basically, because he was locked away. So he's going to break him out somehow.
And that's the story I wanted to read. I wanted him to be breaking out half-fish cousin as being a half-fish and then going into the city of gods under the sea. And that's always like a tease. And I was like, this is what I'm going to do now. It's ended. Damn it.
How's he going to break his cousin out? He's going to put a hat,
exactly.
Put a hat on him.
Exactly. And this is the hilarious part of the story I want to read about. Like, that's what I meant in the beginning. I like it, but it always ends when I want it to start. It's like, this should be the next, like, if this book was a 400-page book and this was the first part of it, I would love it, I think.
Okay.
But it just ended prematurely for me.
Well, I think, Lovecraft was a bit, I wouldn't say lazy, but he couldn't work hard enough to kind of write a full-length book, I think.
So, sequel, please. Fish cousin in the asylum.
Put a hat on and
jump. Like suppose that this whole thing we just talked about would be a chapter 1, and then chapter 2 would be the anxiety attack story, but the fish cousin in the asylum.
Oh, okay, that would be chapter 2.
And then the chapter 3 would be like
he's murdered by the fish people?
Maybe, or he would like try to get him out, but he would get killed by the police, and then the cousin or something. And then the cousin would finally somehow get out, and then the drunkard would like get him, and something. That would be very, you know what I mean? Stuff would be happening. That's what I wanted in this story.
I thought a lot of things happened in this. Actually.
It did, but yeah.
I think you're looking at it through like kind of a modern lens.
Okay.
Where kind of like, as I said, when I was like re-listening to it, I was like, oh, it's really obvious. But I mean, kind of he was doing this before everybody else.
That's true. For the time, it's great.
Yeah.
Yes. I have to say that after having talked about this, I like it better.
Okay.
So that's a good sign.
Would you? What would you do? Gonna shoot yourself or go with the fish people?
I'll go with the fish people, 100%.
I think I would too.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Sounds. It might be even better than
You live forever.
Than Innsmouth. Like definitely better than Innsmouth and Arkham.
Actually, the part it says you can. The fish people, they never die. They just live there forever. But I mean, like to meet like old relatives and stuff. That
I wish you saw Paul's face now. I was like, I
like
don't know.
Uncle Vic again.
I don't want my fish Uncle Vic.
Yeah.
His left-footed thing and his face is a catfish snout.
He tells the same fucking stories every time. It's like driving me nuts. I'll be like chlorine back out of the ocean.
The ocean is vast and it's bigger
true.
than the land.
Yeah.
So there are plenty of fish in the sea, literally.
You're right. Yes.
And you could transform them too. I wish. I guess. If you can do it with people, you can do it with all kinds of creatures. So you'll have all kinds of fun in the sea, I think.
Well, the first book we're talking about, Dagon, when the main character sees the sort of this big monolith, and it's got the carvings in it of the fish people.
Okay.
But one of the fish people is killing like a whale.
Oh.
And the whale is like the same size as the fish person.
Ah.
So you can imagine how these fish people, maybe some of them are huge. So if you're going back in as like a human fish person, you're probably quite small compared to the regular ones. You're going to get bullied, picked on.
I wonder if there's like a life cycle and they transform into whales or something like that.
No, I think they're just sort of ruling the sea.
Yeah, it was fun. I didn't regret reading it at all. I would have never considered reading it without you, so thank you.
Oh, okay, that's good.
It was fun.
Yeah, I hope I kind of changed your mind a little bit about it.
You did great, and you had so many good points and so many like tidbits I've never heard of, so thank you for being the Lovecraft expert.
You should get me on again.
I'll forward the hate mail to your email address.
And all the mistakes I've made.
This is not too serious. This podcast is just, the point of this podcast is, do you want to read this? You should have an idea. If you don't want to read this, at least you know what this is now. Yeah,
as I said, I think it's a good way to sort of, you're not going to get anything groundbreaking, but, this was one of the guys that kind of started this kind of genre.
Yeah. I have a problem with old classics that I don't like them and they don't hold up, and this one did hold up.
Yeah. What was an old classic you tried to read that you couldn't?
Recently, I've read The Foundation by Isaac Asimov.
Ah, yeah, you said.
And it's going to be another episode coming up. And I've read a bunch of, or like even movies or like classic art and stories, like all these like renowned, highly rated. I never liked them, except Dune, which you keep referencing. And I was looking for a Dune reference, and I didn't think hard enough about it. Was there a Dune reference in this?
I've never read Dune. I've never seen the movie.
Heresy.
I don't want to. I tried to read like Dracula.
I don't want to read it.
I couldn't get through it.
It's another one of those. So this, like if it's very old and very highly acclaimed and regarded and classic, and I probably won't hate it. And this one I like. So thanks for recording it. It was fun.
Yeah. We cover another Lovecraft or maybe Heinlein.
Yes, we could do the Starship Troopers one day.
Yeah.
Or any book.
Heinlein's an interesting guy too. So
one thing I'm going to say, just to put an incentive. If you don't know, Paul's also an artist. And I'd like to support him because I like art a lot.
You like my art?
Yeah, actually, yes. Unironically, I like it.
Thank you.
And I'd like you to do something with it, which you want to. So before I finish editing this, I like to put a link to your website, place, shop for your art. What is it?
Mostly it's sort of Japanese landscapes. sort of painted in the sort of like kind of impressionist style, I guess. If you ever look at, say, Japanese landscapes in terms of art, it's always that kind of cliched Japanese style of sort of ink.
Yeah, I do like it. It's very unusual.
Yeah.
It's very... I haven't seen this style much anyway. It's great, so go for it.
Yeah, thanks.
So I'll put a link in the description.
Okay.
So here's your incentive. Just, you have to finish something up before I release this.
Yeah. Well, I think that probably next week or so.
Yeah,
I think
great.
I can get something up.
Go for it.
I hope. So we'll see.
Right, so see you on the next episode. And
Yep.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening. Check out Paul's paintings, rate us on Apple Podcasts, and on the next episode, we're going to go back to the Broken Earth trilogy, the second book called Obelisk Gate.